If you want a career that's actually yours, not something that like somebody forced you into, not something that you decided and maybe kind of settled for because that seemed like the best option at the time, something that actually uses your skills in a way that is enjoyable for you. And if you're looking for that kind of a career, the question is, where do you even start? And that's the question topic for today's episode is episode number 4 of Helping Reddit Get Unstuck. My name is Caleb Morgan. Thank you so much for being here. In today's episode, we have the comment here. It comes from the username Hopeful Flamingo 6697, and they say this. They say, "I spent my entire life locked in a room studying for someone else's dream. Now I'm rebuilding myself from absolute zero, and I have no idea who I even am. Where do I start? I'm just standing here in the middle of nowhere doing this whole rebuilding myself thing that everyone on the internet says, talking about it like it's simple. Like, okay, if I'm starting from scratch, but scratch of what exactly? What does that even mean when you don't know who you are outside of the thing you were forced to become? I genuinely just want to move forward. I want to build a life that's actually mine. I want a stable career, real skills, and to finally start doing things from scratch on my own terms. I just don't know where to start." And that's the thing, right? Because if we don't know where to start, it's like, how do we know what's actually important to focus on in order to get this journey going so that we don't feel lost from the very beginning? So that we don't, kind of like we talked about in previous episodes, feel like we're staring at the front of the corn maze without knowing exactly what to do next. So many options. What do I do next? And so I have a different thought for this episode of how do we even start. There's a particular place where I think is best to start based on what I've seen in my own journey of finding work that I enjoy, that finding work that aligns with me, that's my career. And it starts kind of back when I was in college, this concept of being in the first year or two of college. They make you take all these gen ed classes, they call it general education courses, that is just the same kind of foundational education classes everybody has to take, regardless of what your actual like career path is, regardless of what field of study you end up being in, regardless of what your major ends up becoming. And so those are like math classes, English classes, like science classes, and just basic general course classes. And during that first year or two, there was like a lot of pressure on me to try to figure out exactly what I'm going to choose to study for the rest of my college career. Because it wasn't just about studying, it was about, in essence, choosing what career I'm going to do for the rest of my life moving forward. How am I going to choose between all these different options to do something for the next 40, 50 years that how am I even going to know what I'm going to like? And there's so many different factors to that. Again, where do I even start with that? And so I think there's, kind of two places that we generally think are good starting places, but maybe a little bit misguided. So the first place we usually start when we're thinking about this kind of thing is, well, let me look at my current skills and past experience, right? Let me look at the things that I can do well, the things that either my education or my, past jobs have trained me for, my experience in those jobs. So maybe I'm, really good at, like, I've worked in many restaurants myself personally. So maybe that's like customer service type related activity. And so maybe because I was like server, waiter, host, that kind of a thing of the dining room. So maybe I should use customer service as the thing that helps me decide how to start on this path of finding a career that I love, finding work that's mine, that's for me. Or I take that past experience, right? That maybe because I've, you know, well, that's actually kind of the same thing, right? That experience of being in the restaurant also brought a lot of skills as well, and maybe I'm really good at speaking to people, and so like that's the thing. I'm gonna try to find a field of study or find a career where I can speak to people because that's my skills and experience from the past. So that's one place that we, generally pull from, and that that makes sense. It's logical because it's kind of what we're familiar with, what we've experienced thus far. But the problem with that is that if we just focus on that, just focus on the past, then it's kind of moving backwards. We're kind of limiting ourselves to what we have already experienced, disregarding any future skills we're going to develop, disregarding any future experience we could find ourselves in. But then the other way that we typically try to start this kind of a journey is by looking at the future, looking at what the marketplace or kind of the system of education has already set up as the potential paths for us to choose from. What are in the realm of college, what are the potential degrees that I could actually have a major in at this university? Right? What are the potential job opportunities in the market right now that I could potentially pursue because those are jobs that are available? And where I went to school, there was a big financial city. And so, like, pretty much everybody's in finance of some kind, right? Like banking or they wealth management or they're working as an accountant for some company. And so, finance would have been kind of a layup. You know what I mean? I could have studied finance and then been able to get a job in a lot of different places just because that was what was available for me in the marketplace. But the problem with focusing on that to determine where I start with this kind of a career journey or rebuilding myself, as they say here, if I focus just on what's available to me, then I miss out on other opportunities that might not be as popular, might not be as um, prescribed by the marketplace, by society. And that is an important factor, but maybe there's other opportunities and other ways that I can serve people in a career that would better align with me and who I am, and not just the prescribed paths that are there. So if we don't want to look at the skills and the experience as our starting point, and we don't want to look at the prescribed future paths that someone else has laid out and kind of would force us to settle for something as our starting point, then where do we start? And I think it boils down to one word. And just before I get there, I want to remind the commenter here and whoever is watching this, watching the replay or watching right now, we have to have the right mindset going into this. We have to have the right mindset about how we start this journey. Because if we can start in the right place. That's what this episode is all about. Where do we start? But even if we start in the right place, if we don't have the right mindset about it, then the very next step could end up being a pitfall. The very next step could end up setting us back to before the beginning. And now we're, unfortunately giving up or unfortunately having second guesses and not being able to kind of weather the storm of all the different setbacks and side quests and different parts of the journey that are inevitable with finding work that we enjoy, finding work that aligns with who we are and what we're here to do, our calling. And so that mindset piece that's so important is this: you are irreplaceable. You have an amazing purpose and potential. And even if you don't know exactly what that purpose is and what that calling is, I want to remind you today that you have that potential, that you were created with amazing abilities and gifts and potential inside of you for a reason. I like to say that, like I said, you are irreplaceable. There was a student that came up to me after a conference one time, and I asked him. He said, "I appreciate what you said up there on stage." And I said, "Oh, what was your favorite part?" And he goes, "When you reminded me that I'm not a mistake here." And sometimes we just need to be reminded, right, of things that maybe we haven't heard in a long time. And so if you haven't heard this recently, I want you to know there's somebody here in YouTube land on the other side of the screen that believes that you are amazing and that you have an amazing potential and you are not a mistake here and you're irreplaceable. So when you walk into this journey, figuring out where to start to actually do something that I enjoy, where to start to actually find a career that I love, where to start to find the thing that I could be excited to get up every day and go to work. I can be excited. Now, not every day, right? Some days are going to be a little harder than others, but I can still be excited about the impact I'm making, about the actual skills and how that lines up with the work that I do and how this is a perfect fit for me. Before we get there, we have to keep in mind that you do have a purpose here. And today we're talking about how to start on the journey to find that. So it boils down to one word. Where do we start? The one word is fascination. Fascination. What is your fascination? Meaning, when I say fascination, I mean like, what is the thing that you would say you're fascinated with? That part of life, that different thing that you're just so interested in learning more and more about, that thing that you like to study when you have like free time. I think I heard it from Rory Vaden one time. It's like, what's that thing that you would, if you had a free day, you'd be studying, you'd be looking up, be watching YouTube videos about it. You'd be looking up articles about it, reading blog posts, checking books out of the library to learn more about it. You'd be watching other people talk about it. You'd be making friends with people that are also fascinated with this thing. What's that thing for you? And it can be the thing that you use to kind of like kick back and let off steam, but not necessarily just like the thing that's a break from life. I'm talking about the thing that is, it lights you up inside. It makes you smile. It makes you like, oh, this is so cool. It's like a never ending. I keep wanting to learn more and more about this. It's like I can't get to the end of this thread. I keep pulling this thread and finding more and more amazing things about this particular subject in my life. And for me, that thing was magic tricks. And that's a very unique niche subject, right? I was 8 years old, and my mother got me a little magic kit, a little TV magic cards off the TV kind of thing, and ordered this thing for me. And I was learning little magic tricks off the instructions, myself, and I was just fascinated with magic tricks, how it worked, having the secrets and keeping the secrets and knowing that there's different ways to do these things, and we have special gimmicks and different props that can create illusions of amazing, impossible looking things happening, and all the learning of misdirection and psychology and audience management, and how do we present ourselves on stage, and how do we create and design tricks, kind of like I did for Penn and Teller, designing amazing things that the whole world will see on TV that somehow will fool magicians themselves. And there's so many different layers to this subject, this topic that I'm fascinated with. And so what is it for you? Maybe it's art, for example. Maybe you just love to do art. And maybe it's drawing, maybe it's painting, maybe it's sculpture, photography. Maybe you like to study how art works and you like the history of art. That's a class that I almost didn't pass in college, but my mother was fascinated with art history. So it was weird. It didn't really pass down in the genes. I didn't really get those genes. I don't know. But she was fascinated with art history and learning like of the decades, how the different art pieces have changed and all the different artists and how their contributions have formed what we understand as art in today's day and age, and how all this works together. That the art, she was just fascinated with it. Maybe another thing could be back to the financial. Maybe mathematics is the thing you're fascinated with. Maybe you love getting the numbers just right, making sure everything, all the numbers crunch together. Maybe you're like have an immaculate, spreadsheet budget, for you and your household, and you just love making sure that everything is just perfect, and thinking of new ways and studying other people online and how these people are managing different spreadsheets and ledgers and, kind of like accountants and that kind of a thing. You just really like when everything works out perfectly and the numbers are just nice in order and everything is nice and clean. Maybe that's your thing. We all can think of like a teacher, right, who was just fascinated with the subject they were teaching. I remember a math teacher that was in college actually, and he was so great. He would start the whole class by opening up with a joke, and he was teaching us like how math actually works, not just formulas and different decimals and all the different, let's see, you can tell I'm not really a math guy, but all the different variables and everything, but actually like what's the purpose? Like, how do we use these things in a real world? And how do we take what we know in math and like math was his thing, is fascinated, right? What is the thing that you are fascinated with? And so that's what I want you to put in the comments for today. What are you fascinated with? What's that thing for you that it just holds your attention? You just smile thinking about it. You want to tell everybody about it. It's so exciting. What are you fascinated with? Because once we figure out what we're fascinated with, we don't have to start with our skills and experience from the past. We don't have to only take a look at the options that have been laid out for us by the marketplace. We can start with what we're fascinated with. And that's like a great place to begin our journey because then we can know exactly where we want to focus. So, what are you fascinated with? Let me know in the comments. And if you're watching on the replay here, let me know if you have any questions about this, any things that pop up for you. What pops up for you when you think about fascination? When you start to think about where do I actually spend my time? What am I actually intrigued with and studying all the time and trying to learn more and more about? If you have any questions on anything that I've discussed today, please drop those in the comments as well. I'll be taking a look at this over the next week or so after the replay. And thank you so much for being here. Again, what are you fascinated with? That's where we start the journey today. You got this. You can do it. And don't ever forget that you are irreplaceable and you have an amazing potential. Let's start with what you're fascinated with. My name's Caleb Morgan. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you on the next episode. This is episode number 4 of Helping Reddit Get Unstuck.